everyone. Welcome to another episode of AWS She Builds Tech Skills North America. I'm Kandyce Bohannon, one of your co-hosts on the show, solutions architect based here in Minneapolis. It's actually a beautiful day for the record. And today I'm joined by a very new special co-host, Eileen Lee. So Eileen, I really appreciate you being with us. We've got a really fun and exciting episode coming up. But kind of as we kick things off, can you introduce yourself? Talk a little bit about how long you've worked at AWS and what you do here and things.
Sure. Thanks, Kandyce, and great to see everybody. Really excited to have this opportunity, so thank you for it. My name is Eileen, like Kandyce said. I'm based in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, for any of my East Coasters. And I've been with AWS roughly 4 years, coming up on September. I support namely software customers in the healthcare, life sciences, and financial services space. And for those that are not familiar with the day-to-day of what an account manager does, then the best way to conceptualize my role is an internal advocate and champion for my customers to best meet their business goals and objectives. So for instance, whether that's, engaging our AWS industry BDs for thought leadership discussions, our service specialists for more technical and architecture-oriented discussions, or, value-added executive engagements. There's just a ton of different resources that we can leverage to support our customers. So I do love the kind of wide range of flexibility that we have to get our customers connected to the right people. And it also gives me the unique opportunity to network internally. One of the customers that I've had the privilege of supporting is the one that we're spotlighting today, Metrum Research Group. Metrum Research Group is a SaaS customer that's specializes in biomedical modeling and simulation. And they have both a commercial and nonprofit arm, which is really near and dear to my heart. It's great to be able to support a customer that has, non-commercial, nonprofit arm to their business. And I'll also be touching a little bit about how we as AWS have had the opportunity to power their non-commercial arm of the business as well. So yeah, hopefully that sums it up.
Yeah, I think that's great. Always like to have different, personas and different job types on the show, so we can kind of show to people that there really are a lot of different ways that you can be involved in tech. And I think the account manager job is super, super important. The last account manager that I worked with, she's like the quarterback. Like, she tells us where's the ball going, what play are we going to do, what types of other roles do we need to pull in. So it's a super important role, and I really appreciate the work that you do. So thank you.
Of course. And if anybody is curious about the job, I can plug my LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. I love networking with people, even if you're in sales or not in sales, or maybe kind of newer in your career and just want to get a pulse of what it's like. Happy to chat. So definitely hit me up.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that too. Love the engagement and all those sorts of things. So now we've learned a little bit about you, what you do. I will post your LinkedIn whenever we come back, but I want to go ahead and play our interview that we had with your customer, Metrum Research Group. We were so lucky to have the CEO come on and talk to us about her path and how she got there. Also, she is really amazing, lots of different turns along the way, and I feel like I learned a lot from this interview, and so I hope that you do too. And as you're watching, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to have shown on the screen, I will post as long as your question is nice, I will post it here on our show, and we'd be happy to try to get that answered for you. So here comes our interview with Michelle Johnson. Welcome to another interview on She Builds Tech Skills North America. I'm Kandyce Bohannon, one of the co-hosts that we have here on our She Builds North America core team. And today I'm joined by a very special co-host, which is Eileen Lee. Would you like to take just a minute and introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do here?
Sure. Thanks so much, Kandyce, and great to meet everybody. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Eileen Lee. I've been with Amazon.
I love technical difficulties. Let me try this one more time. Here we go. Very sorry. I'm just uploading the video again. Things happen. I think, welcome to another interview on She Builds Tech Skills North America. I'm Kandyce Bohannon, one of the co-hosts that we have here on our She Builds North America core team. And today I'm joined by a very special co-host, which is Eileen Lee. Would you like to take just a minute and introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do here?
Sure. Thanks so much, Kandyce, and great to meet everybody. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Eileen Lee. I've been with Amazon just about 4 years as an account manager. And of those 3 years, I've been supporting and had the privilege of working with Metrum Research Group. Our partnership has namely been around really driving more business impact and value for their end users, both on the commercial and non-commercial arm of the business. So I'm really excited to have Michelle Johnson, CEO of Metrum, here with us today. Michelle, I don't think that does you justice in terms of a full introduction. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about yourself and I guess just a little bit of a glimpse into your illustrious career.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm delighted to be here, and it's an honor to be asked to be on the program. So thank you. So I'm Michelle Johnson. I'm the CEO of Metrum Research Group. We are a decision informatics company, and we work with biotech and pharma companies. So we basically help decision makers navigate their way through the drug development process by providing both services and solutions in quantitative decision making. So we have services where we build mathematical models and simulators to help decision makers understand the data that they're seeing and explore different decision paths. And then we also have solutions. And our flagship solution is actually Networks, which is built on AWS. So we've had a long-standing partnership with AWS to deploy this cloud computation platform for the type of analyses that we run.
That is awesome. As a data nerd, and I also love healthcare, all of this stuff makes me so excited. Quantitative, pharmaceuticals, like all of these things make me very excited to hear about. And I love that it's all running on AWS as well. So it's pretty exciting. So that is awesome, what Metrum does. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about them in a few minutes. How did you start your career? Like you aren't just born as a CEO. Tell us how you started things off.
Absolutely. So I'm going to say I have a bit of a non-conventional path to the CEO seat, but I don't know that there is a conventional path. So maybe that comment doesn't make sense, but I'm actually a marketer by training. So I did my undergrad in advertising and public relations. And I started out in radio. So I did some promotions. I also did production. So I worked on like cutting audio tape, literally, and building commercials and things like that. And then I also was on the air just a little bit to explore that career path as well. And the one that resonated with me the most was promotions, which is kind of like the marketing side of radio. And so right out of school, I got a job with the company that owns the Orlando Magic. So I was in professional athletics for a season. And that was an amazing experience. It's very high paced. This was way back in the day before Moneyball came out. So there wasn't so much with respect to statistics and using data to win games. But there was a really great entry into the workforce. So I did that for several years and then, had my 2 kids and we decided actually to up and move to China for a couple of years. So I was teaching a marketing course in central China to students who couldn't leave mainland China, whether it was because they couldn't get a visa or they didn't have finances to be able to fund that. So we brought basically an American education to these Chinese students. And so I taught a marketing course there and it was extremely humbling. You go to a place like that and think, oh, I'm going to help and I'm going to teach and I'm going to serve. And you end up being helped and being taught and being served by such an amazing culture there. So that was a really profound experience for me and my husband and our 2 kids. And then my mother actually got sick with lung cancer. And so we decided to move back to Boston to be with her. And that's actually one of the reasons why I ended up at Metrum Research Group, several years later, because I really love the mission here to defeat disease. That really resonates with me, of course. And so we moved back to Boston and kind of worked a bunch of different marketing jobs, and then eventually decided, my kids were kind of older and getting into school age, so I decided to kind of go back to full-time work and focus on my career. And so I decided, like anyone would do when they want to go back into a full-time career, I decided to run for public office, which was a fascinating experience. Learned a lot through that. It was small town politics, so it was challenging to walk into a room of a bunch of townies, like a bunch of old guys who had been running the town for a long time, and try to figure out how to win their respect. And over the course of about 9 months, I was able to really make a name for myself and be able to participate in some pretty meaningful discussions. And, on the professional side, I had never really run a social media campaign, because back when I did marketing, there was no social media yet, probably aging myself. But so I used the political campaign as an opportunity to brush up on social media skills. So I ran my whole campaign on Facebook, which at the time was the social media platform of choice. And, had an amazing experience doing that, learned a lot. And in the end, about 3,000 people came out to vote, and I lost by 60 votes. So it's tight margins, but definitely worth the experience.
Wow. It's so interesting because, that's such a bold and unconventional pivot from public office to CEO of a healthcare life sciences SaaS company. But it's interesting because as you were talking about what you were tasked with doing, which is essentially creating this name for yourself and being tasked with oftentimes, being around mainly a male-dominated space, I can imagine that there's a lot of parallels from your time in political office to what you face in your day-to-day at Metrum, right?
Yeah, definitely the male-dominated industry. We have a lot of amazing women scientists in our industry. But like many other industries, the higher you get, the less representation you have. And I think that's changing over time. But, so actually following public office, since I lost the election, I decided to get a job at Babson College, which is an entrepreneurship school. So I really wanted to learn like more solid business strategy. And when I was going to school there, I got a job so that I could work and go to school in the same place. It's just more convenient for me with a family and all that. Plus, Babson paid for my education that way. So that was kind of a nice strategy. But my job was actually running the summer programs. And so we would work with all of the athletic coaches, a lot of very strong personalities. We would work with the food service and facilities. So again, that theme came up where, I'm entering these worlds that I don't know much about, and I have to find a way to navigate lots of different strong personalities and perspectives in order to get a job done. And so learned a lot about how to do that through those experiences as well. And then as I was finishing up my MBA, I was looking for something completely new. And this is where kind of that purpose, the purpose-driven part of me kind of woke up. And I was really intrigued by life sciences. And so I actually know one of our scientists here at Metrum Research Group. I know him socially, and he had reached out and said, hey, we're looking for a marketer at our little company. Are you interested? And, I put it on the list thinking, well, that might be something to explore. And so as I finished up my degree, I was looking at all different opportunities, and I came to Metrum Research Group to meet with the CEO just to see if there might be a fit. And, I remember having very clear questions that I wanted answered in that first meeting. And one was, is this a company that has potential for growth? Or is it stagnant, right? Like, is there growth potential? The second question was, is there vision in this leadership team? Do they see that they can grow and have an impact on the world in a positive way? And the third one was, is there a Michelle-shaped hole in this organization? Is there something that I could do here that would provide value that no one else is providing, nobody else is sourcing? And, you know, that someplace where, not a place where I can shine, but a place where I can bring my skills and my strengths, and they would be needed and welcomed and valued. And so, as I was talking with the CEO, I have all these things in my mind, and, you know, lo and behold, it checked all the boxes. At the time, we only had about 20 employees, and I think none of them had a formal business background. So it was very clear that I could kind of come in and provide value right off the bat. So I was actually hired as the director of strategic marketing. But in the back of my head, I knew I wanted to get into business strategy. You know, going to Babson College, you learn a lot about not just starting businesses, but growing businesses. So I had accumulated so much experience and knowledge that I really wanted to use for, you know, for a good purpose. And I felt like this was the right place to do that. So I started as a marketer, did that for just a couple of years, and then moved into the chief operating officer position. And I served in that capacity for about 6 years. And then just 18 months ago was appointed CEO.
That's super cool. I love the questions that you asked yourself. I think those are super valuable. My favorite one was, is there a Michelle's shaped hole here for me? I don't think that we think of that often enough. We're like, do I fit in here? And you're like, can I add value here? So I think that is kind of turning it a little bit from what maybe a normal approach would be. And it's very smart. And I like that.
It doesn't work for everyone because there's a downside to that. I ended up in an organization where people aren't like me. And so how does iron sharpen iron when there's no other iron around, right? Like, how do you get better at your craft? How do you challenge yourself to, you know, try new things in your domain if you don't have peers? So there are downsides to it, but I know that drives me. Like, I would much rather be, you know, kind of on an island doing my thing than around a bunch of other people that do the same thing. The other is that I'm not a very competitive person with other people, and especially in marketing, you know, you end up kind of like competing with each other to achieve position. And I wasn't interested in that. I'm very competitive with myself. Like, I want to be the better Michelle tomorrow. And so this kind of set me up for that, for, you know, being able to achieve bigger things, and then also to broaden. So that's the other key thing that I really learned in this, I've been learning in this position and in this company, is where I saw a need, I just jumped in and did it, right? Especially as chief operating officer, it's such a fascinating role. It's so ill-defined. In fact, I did a podcast a couple of years ago about like the role of the COO and what even is that. Depending on your company, it could be, you know, completely different from one to the next. But one of the things I loved about it, in a growing company, I would adopt a role, let's say human resources, right? So I would do I did HR for like a year and a half by myself, right? So I would do all the offer letters, and I would process, you know, help process payroll, and I would do the benefits and like everything HR. I learned how to do that. I did it. And then I got it to a point where I was like, okay, I need a real HR person now. Like, I cannot take this any further. But at that point, I knew enough to know what to look for. And so when I was looking for the right person, and we have the right person in that role, you know, it was like, I knew what I was looking for. I knew the persona, I knew the skills, but I also knew the approach. And I did the same for quality. I did the same for tech, you know, and so it was really interesting to be in a role where you're kind of building the structure of an organization through experience, taking it so far and then calling in the real experts, and then just getting them, you know, onboarded onto our culture and our guiding principles and things like that.
So now kind of turning back maybe to your relationship here with AWS and Eileen and your whole account team. Can you talk just a little bit more about that cloud piece of it and how you've worked with your AWS account team and how that's kind of helped you grow and expand Metrum as a whole?
Absolutely. So the origin of the Metworks platform it's kind of a typical story. but basically we were, the analysis that we conduct, of course, is very computationally heavy. Like we're building these models and simulators that need a lot of computation to run. And we were constrained by not only how quickly we could do our work, but the kind of work we could do because of computation. We had a grid in the closet that we shared. This was back when we were actually geographically located in the same place. And, this was 12 years ago. It was quite a while ago that our founders kind of said, you know what, we got to do something about this. So let's look at the cloud. Let's move to the cloud. And AWS was the only game in town at the time. Like there was nobody else. So we partnered with AWS that early on. And instead of just doing our modeling work on the cloud, we moved everything to the cloud, all of our infrastructure. And I wasn't part of those discussions. This was before my time at Metrum Research Group, but I think it was kind of like, if we're going in, we're going in, like just all chips in. And I'm so glad that they made that decision, because we're now a virtual company. We're geographically dispersed across the US, and that would have been really hard to do if our infrastructure was on-prem. So having virtual infrastructure is huge for us. Also, everything we do is in silico or on the computer. Like we don't have wet labs, we don't have test tubes. Everything that we're doing is on the computer. So it made a lot of sense for us. So we moved to the cloud, and provisioning infrastructure isn't exactly the wheelhouse of a pharmacologist or a statistical modeler in our field. And so we basically built like an interface that made it easy for our scientists to provision the infrastructure that they need for a given job, and started using that internally. And we were able to turn around deliverables much faster than our customers had expected. And we were able to take a creative approach by working in parallel and, really taking advantage of the high performance computing. And so our customers, who many of them are our peers, especially in big pharma, right? We work with clients who do similar work that we do. We just might come in with a certain specific expertise or something like that. And so they were seeing what we were able to do, and they said, well, how are you doing that? How are you doing that so quickly? How did you do that in parallel? And we said, well, we built this thing, and of course they wanted it. So thus Networks became, a product, and we started to commercialize it. So it was a very organic thing. We didn't really have a business strategy around this. We weren't like, we're going to build this thing and change the world. And, we were really thinking about how we could transform our work. But then we were able to see that the impact that we could have on our mission, if we could also have an impact on defeating disease via tech, that's scalable, right? So there's only so many models that our team can build. We're headcount driven, we're headcount constrained. But if you think about making a platform available to scientists who do similar work, now you can extend that, the impact and have a hockey stick, which is great. So we commercialized it and started selling it to some of our customers. And now I think we have about almost 30 companies that are using Networks. And many of those companies are the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. So there's amazing adoption. And like I said, efficiency is a big thing, but also just changing the way that we work, the way that we're able to approach a quantitative analysis. That changed the game with that. And then the other big value proposition for Networks is that we, of course, work in a regulated industry. And so all of the tools that you use to conduct your analyses have to be validated. And so we provide a validated instance for the analysts to do their work. And that instance is also consistent from person to person. So when you're collaborating, you don't have to worry about versions of software or anything like that. It's all very consistent, very standard, and it's all validated. So the analyst doesn't have to worry about whether or not they can use a certain tool for regulatory work. So that's been a key value driver for our customers. That kind of came out of nowhere. We're thinking, oh, HPC, and then they're like, validation. So it's been interesting to see what the customer values. But the partnership with AWS has been really great, and we kind of formalized our product team and our engineering team about 2.5 years ago. And one of the first things that Joydeep and his team did is they started connecting with our AWS representatives. Prior to that, we just kind of used the services. We didn't really have much of a relationship, but now we have a very fruitful relationship with many people at AWS, Eileen included. And, we work through things like, architecture to, new features and new offerings that you may be working on, to like billing and how to make sense of billing. And, it runs the gamut. And so we've had a really amazing experience with our AWS partners.
Yeah, I think it's been really amazing too to be able to support your non-commercial side of the business as well. I don't know if, Kandyce, you're aware of this program, or for those watching, but we actually have a program internally called the Health Equity Initiative. It was created a number of years ago, but also brought to light again during the spike in COVID. But essentially, it's our investment in companies that are dedicated to helping to find cures for hard-to-treat diseases, and being able to fund some of that nonprofit work. So yeah, Metrum was actually able to apply and qualify for the program about 2 years ago. So just, I think, amazing from an account manager perspective to have kind of, my feet dipped both in the commercial side and non-commercial side, and see the impact that you guys are able to have on that side of the house as well.
Yeah, that's another part of our DNA. We're big proponents of open science and open source. And
Right.
so we actually develop, we use the statistical programming language R for a lot of our analysis. So we've built many R packages that we just release freely, and many of them are open source, where we engage the community for updates and things like that. And then open science, we release all kinds of content, like educational content, for free via YouTube channels and things like that, so that anyone who's aspiring to kind of learn this kind of work could at least get started without having to pay anything. So that's another part of our DNA, is to make sure we're giving back to the community, and that we're growing the science, right? Because we feel that the future is going to be in simulation and mathematical models, and the quantitative approach to not even just decision making, but to everything is becoming more and more prevalent. And so we feel a responsibility to make sure that those things are done well, and we feel that we do those things well. So we want to share what we know.
I love that. I hear a lot of similarities in your story and the Amazon story, and your customer obsession, whether that's like your customers that are using your platform, or like the end users who are benefiting from the simulations. It's been really cool to hear the story, and kind of how you had a product and then you made it a SaaS offering. I think that's really fascinating. So
it's been a wild ride. Yeah.
To slowly start to wrap things up here, Michelle, if you have any parting words for the audience in terms of, for folks that want to emulate maybe your unconventional career path and maybe want to find themselves in leadership, right? Do you have any words of advice that you can share?
Probably the first thing I would say is find your why. So I'm a big Simon Sinek fan with the whole, like, what's your why? Find your why. Like, what drives you? What are you excited about? What's meaningful to you? Because life is too short to work diligently on something that doesn't have any meaning to you. And your why might be very different than my why. And, so find your why, and then just go find a way to live it out. And that could look very differently than what you had imagined for yourself. Like, I remember thinking, I want to be a chief marketing officer one day. That would be really cool. I would have never aspired to be the CEO of a science company, right? But I'm so glad that I am. And I'm so glad I'm not a CMO. And I wouldn't have found this path if I didn't chase after opportunities that help me live out my why. And so that I would encourage everyone to really dig deep and understand what drives you, what's meaningful to you, what's your why, and then just open your eyes around you and just see what opportunities would align with that and give you, the opportunity to live it out.
I I love that. Also a big Simon Sinek fan. I was looking for my book. I don't see it like right in front of me, but I have it somewhere. So I like that one. And I think that helps us be more purposeful, especially women in tech in general. When we can find that why, it helps us stay in tech and really be engaged and make the difference in the world that we want to see. So I love that. So as we kind of wrap things up, I just want to take one more time around to thank you both for being here with us. Michelle, I love your story. Metrum Research Group does a lot of really cool stuff that I really like to hear the story. I like to hear how you got to where you are. And Eileen, I think it's great to have an account team member on the interviews with us because you know what's happening and you were the quarterback of the AWS account team for them. So, I mean, I had no idea about that grant and things. So I just learned a lot today from you ladies. So I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was awesome.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll see you again soon. Great. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
All right. So that was a great interview, my humble opinion. I really enjoyed a lot of it. I think one of my favorite things is the open part, the open science, like making it available for people to experiment and to use what they've kind of worked on for a really long time there at Metrum Research Group. That was of the many things that she said. That's one that I didn't double click on in the interview itself. How about you, Eileen? What do you like the best?
Yeah, I think on that note too, there are so many similarities in terms of the mental models that Michelle mentioned and the mental models we use internally at Amazon, the customer obsession, the open source type of framework. One thing that really resonated with me, number one, her unconventional career path is just so inspiring. But I think owning and really on the why, in terms of, guiding your career and in your next move is such a good thing to keep in mind. And I think it's oftentimes lost. Like it's easier to think about the title that you want to achieve or the type of company you want to go to. And I think those are all fine criteria, but using that why always allows you to stay true to what's most important. And it actually, in addition to like the working backwards framework that we use, obviously a tremendous amount here. In addition, it reminds me of a quote that don't quote me on this. I think Jeff Bezos said, but it reads something like, "Be relentless about your end goal, but be flexible about the details." And I think in that same vein, right, if you're relentless about your why and what's most significant to you in terms of your career path and what drives you, then, regardless of the title or the type of company, you will end up in that type of position, company that's best suited for you. So yeah, Michelle's just kick-ass. I feel really grateful to be able to support her. It's not every day that I get to work with a female CEO.
Absolutely. I was so happy that we were able to have her on as, an interviewee. And I'm also happy that Michelle's been able to join us back today. So let me bring you onto the stage. Welcome back, Michelle. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be back.
Thanks so much for coming back, for making time for us and all of these sorts of things. We know you're very, very busy. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I'm going to start posting or pulling some of these questions that we've gotten from the audience so far. So audience members, if you have any other questions, comments, you want to share your why, like drop those in the chat and I'd be happy to show them across the screen here for you. One first that I really want to point out, not that we're supposed to be talking about these technical difficulties, but thank you, Tortas and Horchata, for understanding that, stuff happens. So thank you for that. And then Tortas also had a really good kind of comment here about visualization. Data, especially when you get so much data, it's really hard to understand what is happening in there. Do you have any, I don't know how you would visualize your data, but do you have any comments about this, Michelle?
Absolutely, I do. This is something we're very passionate about at Metrum Research Group. And actually, just the other day, I was reviewing some text and I just couldn't get into it. I was like, I don't understand the numbers. What does this mean? And then it wasn't until I went and looked at the data visualized, like plots and figures, then I was like, oh, I get it now. So it's just amazing how it even comes up on a day-to-day basis. But one thing that we've been doing more and more of is providing a visualization app as a deliverable to our services projects. So, you know, we build these mathematical models and simulators, and back in the day, we would, you know, run a bunch of scenarios and put them all in a report. We still do this, you know, reports are important in a regulated industry, but, you know, they're these static versions of the output. And what inevitably happens is your stakeholder says, well, what about this? What if that? You know, show me this. What if we did that? And they want to explore different scenarios, especially when you're making decisions. And so we've started to, we've been building visualization apps for a long time, but now we're starting to get those into the project workflow and delivered as part of the package when we share results with our customers, again, on the services side of the business. Like I said, we're an R shop mostly, so we've been using R Shiny, but you know, we could use any kind of tool to visualize data, but it's so impactful, especially when you pair it with networks, because not only are you able to visualize the results or, you know, certain scenarios, but you're also able to deploy that to the appropriate people and to use the compute power of networks to actually run those simulations. So you don't have to predefine all of the scenarios and then code them up and have them ready to go. Instead, you can let the user define the scenarios and actually run the simulations real time. So this is a game changer for our industry. You know, pharma is a little bit behind just because of all, you know, the way that the regulation works, and that's fair. But we're starting to see an uptick in the interest around having visualized data as a way to make really important decisions about, you know, how we can defeat disease. So that's an area that we're very excited about. Networks makes it, like I said, makes it easy because it's all within the validated environment, but you're also using the compute power. And, you know, you can have like a nice process flow, so you can at least repeat the process and deliver to the right people at the right time. So we're very excited about the adoption around that right now.
Very cool. Good to hear. Thanks for that question or comment, I guess, from Tortas and Horchata in the audience. But, you know, once you get so much, like I said, I'm a self-proclaimed data nerd. And once you show people a little bit of data, they're like, well, what else? And what else? What else? And so the flexibility that you need in your data model becomes important. The modeling and prediction is another important aspect. So it's a really interesting and kind of required thing probably for you to have as part of your package. So cool. I think we had one other. So here was another question that we got from the audience. I'm going to guess that your name is Psi Gamma 71. Thank you for this. So Michelle, now we're shifting over. Like, Metworks is very cool and the tech is neat, but also the show is a little bit about career development and how do you do what you do? Like, you are a CEO, that's so amazing. But how do you deal with how others perceive you? Like, when I see this question, I'm thinking about when you were running for office, or now you are a marketer running a science company, you are a female CEO. Like, you're doing these things that are like out of the box. And I love it. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're amazing. But how do you deal with how people perceive you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a tough question. One thing about myself that many of you can probably relate to is that I'm actually my worst critic. So early on in my career, I assumed that everyone else perceived me the way I perceived me, which was with a hypercritical lens. And it wasn't until I started like really asking for feedback, critical and positive, that really helped me understand, you know, how people outside of me, you know, perceive the work that I do, and, you know, my personality and my approach and all that. So that was one thing that was helpful for me, is actually asking, like, how do you perceive me? Because I learned a lot. I thought it was a lot worse than it was. However, being in so many roles that were new to me, right? Like, I haven't done a lot of roles that I've done before. I'm sure there's perception of, you know, like, why is Michelle doing this? Or does that make sense for Michelle to do this? Can she do this? And honestly, like, you just work really, really hard and let your work speak for itself. And anytime you encounter a situation where it's not the work that is being kind of highlighted, you can point people to it, right? Point people to your output, point people to what you're able to generate in terms of value and in terms of, you know, what you're delivering. That really helps to kind of not just navigate the conversation, but to take control of it. So, for example, you know, I was in a situation where someone literally said to me, like, I don't understand why you have this job. It wasn't this CEO job. It was a job in my past, but like, I don't understand why you got this job. And it was, you know, pretty shocking. But I basically, like, first of all, I was very gracious, and I tried to say, well, like, that's cool. Like, you can have your opinion, and like, I'd like to understand a little bit more about that. I'd like to, you know, why you think that. And let me tell you why I was told I was given this opportunity, A, B, C, D, right? And I went through kind of the facts and shared a little bit more about my background. And this person didn't know what I had done in the past. So it's kind of, I find that when you point to the facts, the truth, the work, it can really just defer, you know, perception. It is a battle, honestly. Like, it can be really tough. But I think also just to, like, approach it with humility and not with, like, well, I'm going to prove to you why I'm here. Like, that's not my style. A lot of people do that, and that's cool. But I just try to, like, seek to understand and be curious, and then demonstrate the value that I can bring. And in order to bring real value, you really have to understand your stakeholders, whether that's your boss, your board, your employees, your customers, you know, whoever the stakeholders are. You have to understand what they value. So pointing it back to value that you can bring, and even your competencies, like, you know, I mean, just sharing some of the work that you've done. I always find, like, case studies are helpful. Like, oh, I did this project a couple of years ago that did it, you know, and just give an example. So that's kind of how I've dealt with it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, Michelle. I think to a certain degree, I do the same thing, especially when I meet new customers and I have to establish credibility really early on. I try to do that and kind of beat them to the punch of, how are you qualified to be my account manager, by kind of sharing my list of experiences with, like, customers and, you know, driving real business value for them. I guess along the same kind of vein and spirit of this question, outside of, you know, just building up your resume and your time and role and your work experience, do you have any tactical advice for building confidence or gravitas in the role? Like, what are your ways to kind of best do that outside of just having as illustrious of a career as you've had?
Yeah. Building confidence and gravitas, that's a very interesting question. And I wrestle with that a lot, you know, because I've been in the CEO role for about 1.5 years now. And it's an evolution, right? It's a development path that's been really fascinating and very different than any other role that I've had to grow into. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd probably say, with respect to confidence, I think practice goes a long way. In fact, I started using the term practice a lot recently. You know, if I'm uncertain about how to handle a situation, I'll say, I'm not really practiced in this, you know? And that reminds me that, like, it's not that I can't do this. It's not that, like, oh, I'm not going to be good at this. It's that I'm not practiced in this. Like, I haven't really done this many times. And to name it and to just kind of, like, put it on the outside of me and say, this is a thing I haven't done much of. Well, I'm going to do it once today, you know, and then I'm just going to put it in my bag as something I've done. And then just kind of do that over and over again. And, you know, I think for me, I don't know that I knew I was doing this, but by stepping into roles that I didn't know how to do, I think I got a lot of practice in a lot of roles and you know, activities and tasks and competencies that I otherwise wouldn't have gained. So a lot of times I step into a situation where I'll raise my hand to do something, and I won't have confidence. I'll just have grit. I'll just have maybe enough curiosity and enough determination to get it done. And the confidence, for me at least, the confidence comes over time. The other thing, of course, is to surround yourself with people that will be supportive but very honest. For me specifically, I like to hear good things about me, but they eventually kind of like land empty, right? If all I hear from you is how great I am, like I don't know that I'm hearing it all. Whereas the people that give me the positives and the negatives, like things I need to work on, I don't like to hear it, but then I really like that I heard it. So surrounding yourself with people that will be honest with you and yet will be patient with you and will, basically like provide that feedback to you in a way to support your growth and your development. I think that's really important, to have people that will give you like candid feedback, and to like grow that muscle to receive it. We just read a great book on our leadership team called Thanks for the Feedback. It's really great. And the whole book is about how to receive feedback, which is fascinating, right? Because every other book I've ever read on feedback is how to give it, right? But this is about how to receive it in a really healthy way. And it gets pretty deep into like motivation and psychology. And the neat thing is that by focusing on how to receive feedback, you'll in turn be better at giving it, because you can have more empathy toward the person that you're giving feedback to. So it was, I highly recommend the book. We did it, like I said, as a leadership team, and it was very well received.
That's so cool. This is kind of in the same vein, but I recently saw a talk about how it's so important when you're receiving positive feedback to learn how to take that, rather than, deflecting and saying like, oh no, it's, it. And well, number one, I'm really interested in reading the book, but something that really stood out about what you said was kind of the mental reframe about, oh, I'm not practiced enough in this. And I feel like it's those small mental tweaks that we can make in the moment that kind of turn something that maybe we're not that well versed in or not confident in yet into an exciting thing, rather than something we're so anxious or, dreading, really. So I love that. I'm going to have to use that for my own purpose. This was a selfish question because it's something that I'm actively working on. I'm actually reading a book called Gravitas right now. So yeah, top of mind. So thank you so much for that. That's super helpful.
Yeah. I like this. I feel like it put a lot of I kind of like the phrase fake it till you make it, but only sort of, because I don't like the faking part. I like that you're like, I need more practice at this, and I'm going to push through with grit, and I need honesty around me so that I know how to get better. I think all of those are really valuable and kind of packages it up in something that's more authentic than fake it till you make it, which is a phrase that I do like. I like it, but I like your twist on that. So also, I wrote down the book. That's why I turned away for just 1 second, and I found the link on Amazon and posted it here for people to go check that out. I'm always looking for new books. In fact, I wrote down the one that Eileen was talking about a few hours ago. So we are kind of nearing the end of our time. I want to pop up a few more links. If anyone has any last comments, questions, we have just a few more minutes. You can follow me on LinkedIn here. I'm kind of easy to find because I have an interesting name. So you can find me you'll see a lot of She Builds content on there, as well as my quest for all of the AWS certifications. That's kind of almost all that I post about. Eileen also mentioned reach out. She would love to chat and connect on LinkedIn and, talk about books and how to do better at different things. I also posted Michelle's earlier, so here she is again. Follow Michelle and learn more about Metrum Research Group. Any parting thoughts from either of you, Michelle or Eileen, before I pop up last couple of things and play that outro music?
Yeah, I guess maybe, I already talked about find your why, but the other thing is just try new things. Like if you're interested and curious about something, don't worry about whether or not you have the qualifications to raise your hand and volunteer, or that, how people will perceive you, or just try it, you know? I always say that to people who are like on the fence about volunteering. A lot of times people don't volunteer because they don't think that they have what it takes, or they won't apply for a job because they don't match every, you know, single bullet point on the job description. And I think we should be really brave and courageous and just try things. And like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And sometimes I'll even play that out. Like, what's the worst that can actually happen if I raise my hand and say, I'm willing to do this? So like kind of at the intersection of being brave, but also being like really, I love that you said transparent, Kandyce, like being honest about what you can and can't, what you have done and haven't done, and, you know, what you feel confident about and what you need help with. And, you know, that'll take you a long way.
I love it. So much value in this conversation about how to grow and, you know, get used to a new role and just try new things. I really, really appreciated this. So here, last couple things that I will post for all of our viewers here. Definitely check out our Splash That page for past episodes. You can find our past episodes on YouTube and Twitch. You can also RSVP for new episodes. I can tell you, though, that this is not quite up to date because I was the last one to update it. So we have more shows in the queue that are not quite listed there. We also have a Spotify podcast. So our old shows get turned into audio-only podcasts that you can listen to. And of course, you can always like and subscribe our YouTube channel here on AWS She Builds. Lots of ways to get in touch with us, even email. So however you want to reach out, we're everywhere. LinkedIn, it's everywhere you want to be. I think that's someone else's tagline. But we really appreciate your time watching us today. Michelle, definitely appreciate all the advice and time that you've spent with us so far. And, you know, I hope that everyone joins us for another call and has learned something in this show today. So with that, we will see you all next time. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.